Hello! Today we wanted to show you the basic concepts of how to apply reverb to your track. Every DAW handles this differently, but we wanted to show you the way to do it to avoid common mistakes that I've personally made in the past. Okay, so we want reverb on a track. If you know how to add effects, your initial thought is probably, let me put reverb on this track. And I get the sentiment there because I've made it before. But reverb tends to be very hard and intense on a computer. So if you have a lot of tracks and you have a lot of reverb effects on those tracks, all of a sudden you run the risk of your computer crashing. So let's avoid that altogether. We're going to introduce the concept of a bus track. A bus track is a track that any number of other tracks can be sent to. It's like a literal bus that carries tracks from one place to the eventual goal, which is your ears. And on this bus, you can have effects that apply to all the tracks inside. So this is great for reverb. And get ready for another analogy to understand why. Imagine that when the bus track has a reverb effect, it transforms into a beautiful concert hall, like Magic School Bus or something. When you send tracks to the bus, it's like those instruments are now inside the hall. By contrast, putting reverb on each individual instrument track is like building a new hall for each instrument to play in, and eventually you run out of space or money. Okay, enough with the analogies. How do we make these bus tracks? Now this is where I may lose some of you, so I'm going to try to move slowly through this. But first, you're going to want to make sure you're in multi-track mode and that you have some audio in here that you can apply reverb to. So I've got a 4-bassoon version of the opening theme from Shrek. And it's sounding fine. Sounds lovely, it's just a little dry, so I want to add some reverb to it. And the first thing we're going to do is add our bus track, and actually I'm going to get rid of these tracks here because we don't need them. If you hit Control Alt Backspace, you'll get rid of those, or Command Option Backspace on Mac. So those are gone. Now I'm going to add my bus track by going to Multi-Track, Tracks, and then add Stereo Bus Track. We want to make sure it's a stereo bus track for our purposes. Now it's called Bus A. We're going to rename this to Reverb, just to be absolutely clear about where we're sending our little tracks. Now we want to put some of these tracks on our bus. So up here we have this icon that says Sends. We're going to click that and you'll see that now all of this has switched to a different looking menu than before. And that's what we want. This is our Sends area. And we're going to send all of these tracks to the reverb track by selecting this window, clicking reverb, and then we are going to make sure that we turn the volume up on this send. You can put it at 0 for now, but we might adjust this later. So that's what you're going to do for all these tracks. Reverb, turn the volume up. If you get tired of trying to find 0 really quickly, you can just click it and type 0. It's probably a much quicker way. Reverb 0. All right, and just to clarify, what we did here when we were changing the volume of each send was we were telling how much of each track we want to send to the reverb bus. So if we had this down at -infinity, nothing would be going to the reverb bus, so there would be no reverb applied to this track, which is very sad. So if we have it at 0, that's just the full amount that the track would normally be putting out will be going to the reverb track, which is not always advisable. You may change that a little bit later. But let's see what happens. So once you have all of your tracks being sent to the reverb bus, you're going to click back onto the effects area of Audition and go down to your reverb bus down here and add a reverb effect. So if you click the little arrow next to, or within the reverb track, go to reverb. I'm using full reverb because it has some very large sounding halls. You'll probably get this warning window, which is exactly what I was talking about before. These are very high CPU usage effects, so you probably don't want to use a bunch of them. I'm going to click Great Hall because it's a very boomy and easy to hear reverb for something like this. And within the reverb plugins, let's look at that. There's a bunch of different presets you can choose, and you can also mess with these settings if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave them the same, and once you're happy with something, you can save it as a preset so you can get back to it later. And once you have that selected, you should be all set. So let's listen now and see what that did. And here's it without reverb. So it really puts it in a different space and just livens it up a little bit. You can make things sound like they are in a cathedral. You can make things sound like they are in a bathroom. You can do a lot of cool things with reverb, but it all starts with having really dry signal at first. So the basic principle here for reverb is that it's better to put the reverb effect on a bus track like this and then send all the tracks that need reverb into the bus track, instead of putting the reverb on every single track, or else you may have a hard time working on the project or you'll face some potential computer crashes. I hope that helps you understand a little bit more about how to apply reverb to your tracks.